Hello and welcome. In the Shotsuki Hoyo monthly memorial, we honored loved ones who passed away in that month, regardless of the year. I will be reading the names of those who have passed away in the month of February. We do this to honor their memory and allow ourselves to appreciate how much we are indebted to these deceased family members and friends for their guidance, love, and friendship throughout the years past. You are invited to burn incense at your Homo Butsudan and Gasho in memory of your deceased loved ones. Minako Nakano, Nobuko Amano, Miyako Kinoshita, Ruby Yoshida, Hatsumi Oto, Michael Mitsuo Doi, George Yamamoto, Hideko Okada Smith, Mariko Tanizaki, Mary Matsumoto, Fumi Yamashita, Rose Watamura, Yoshinobu Wakabayashi, Ronald Nishinaga, Toshiharu Glenn Yonikura, Tsuneo Niwa, Doris Miyashiro, Suzy Shizuko Yamada, Patsy Harue Yanagihara, Betty Torio, Joseph S. Shiraishi, Fred Hashiguchi, Masami Honda, Carol Inoue, Shie Hagio, Satoshi Jack Takagi, Mary Hoshizaki, Fumiko Momita, Iwao Yagura, Otomatsu Yoshihara, Koyoshi Nakamura, Yajuro Nemoto, Mary Sugimoto, James Nicholas Link, George Hoshizaki, Misao Sugiyama, Eda Asaman, Sara Sameshima, Miki Moriyama, Shima Fudo, Yuki Masumoto, Masano Hirata, Megumi Torimaru, Fumiko Yoshihara, Fred Yamaguchi, Masanori Koba, Suma Shimada, Tome Yamashita, Tome Morimoto, Natsue Shinohara, Yaeno Amano, Yujiro Nakano, Don Sadao Takeshita, Sara Tsuneyoshi, Sara Takasuge, Hatsue Kimura, Mine Iwataki, Kotaro Shimizu, Ichigoro Imai, Yukino Kodama, Naminosuke Date, Toyo Hirosho, Akichi Ishisaki, Michi Hanano, Same Odawara, Rino Yanagihara, Namanosuke Tachiki, Unshiro Takashima, Kisoyamon Sato. Again, I invite you to burn incense at your Homo Butsudan and Gasho in memory of deceased family and friends, whether I read their name or not. Alternatively, if you prefer not to burn incense, you may place flowers, a reminder of our impermanence and the beauty and fragility of life, in front of your home altar, in your loved one's remembrance. If you don't have an Butsudan in your home, please place flowers in an appropriate location to remember your family member or friend. On behalf of the Buddhist Temple of San Diego ministerial staff, we extend our heartfelt condolences to you and your family as you remember the passing of your loved ones. Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, taught that those who see only his body do not truly see him. It is those who accept his teaching that truly see the Buddha. With true love and compassion, your loved ones have become one with all light and life, born into the Pure Land. May you, in turn, continue to be guided by the all-embracing wisdom and compassion that is Amida Buddha. Please join me in Gasho, or with palms together. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda, 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 Namanda. Please join me in Gasho. The fragile nature of human existence underlies both the young and the old, and therefore we must, one and all, turn to the teaching of the Buddha and awaken to the ultimate source of life. By so understanding the meaning of death, we shall come to fully appreciate the meaning of this life, which is unrepeatable and thus to be treasured above all else. By virtue of true compassion, let us realize the unexcelled value of our human existence, and let us live with the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, in our hearts. Namandab, 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 Namandab. That reading is Reverend Taitetsu Uno's translation of Renyo Shonin's Hakotsu no Sho, or Letter on White Ashes. We often read a translation of Renyo's words at funerals and memorial services, as they remind us of the fragility of life, the impermanency of life, and the preciousness of life. These words come to mind as I saw the news this past Friday that the coronavirus pandemic reached a grim new milestone in the United States. Our nation's cumulative death toll from COVID-19 recently surpassed 900,000 total deaths. That's a number that's hard for me to wrap my mind around. That tally is the highest number of COVID-19 deaths reported by any individual nation, followed by Russia, Brazil, and India, who report more than 1.8 million deaths combined. It is of little comfort that in terms of coronavirus fatalities per capita, the U.S. ranks 20th, placing our country well behind the top two nations of Peru and Russia in deaths adjusted for total population. It is also of little comfort that the current U.S. daily death rate from the Omicron surge is about 1,000 deaths per day lower than the death rate during the Delta variant wave of several months ago. But those are statistics, not names, not individuals, not friends, not family. Those are just numbers, not people. The fact that the U.S. has surpassed 900,000 COVID deaths as we are on our way to over 1 million coronavirus deaths is mind-numbing. It reminds me of a quote that is often misattributed to the Soviet Union leader Joseph Stalin, that while a single death is a tragedy, 1 million deaths is a statistic. Research shows that it is unlikely Stalin actually said those words, but it is certainly a statement which expresses how the loss of a friend, loved one, coworker, or even an acquaintance is felt as a sharp sting or deep ache, yet the shock of mass mortality is beyond our true comprehension and often downplayed. When I watch or read news stories that focus on individuals hospitalized with or dying from COVID, rather than just reporting the numbers of cases and deaths, I gain a better appreciation in that context for the fragility, impermanency, and preciousness of life, of individual lives. I myself experienced a breakthrough case of Omicron last month, and while I'm vaxxed and boosted, I do have underlying health conditions that could have made the virus more dangerous for me. Fortunately, I recovered without severe complications, yet the experience certainly amplified the truth of my own mortality, and it highlighted the fact that I'm in no hurry to rush toward the end of this life, no matter when that might happen. Buddhism teachings remind us of how fragile and unreplaceable this life is. Shakyamuni Buddha taught that we all experience specific human suffering associated with things like old age, illness, and death. Many of us learn through personal experience, either our own or through our loved ones, that once we get ill, we have little control over our body, and life seems to become more precious to us. But we shouldn't have to experience illness or death on a personal level to understand how precious life truly is. Life is precious regardless of our current state of health. Life is precious whether we are in the midst of a pandemic or not. We occasionally awaken to this truth, only to forget it again when we and our loved ones experience good health. And no matter our state of health, we cling to this life that we know, despite the suffering we experience in this realm, because it is the life we know. Again, news stories that focus on individuals hospitalized with or dying from COVID make this clinging to life evident. I have yet to hear a story of anyone with COVID who said that they were in a hurry to die of the disease. Many healthcare workers relate stories of patients who beg to have their health restored and have this life in samsara extended. We cling to this life in samsara. We cling to our very suffering because it's the life we know. Section 9 of the Tanisho, or A Record in Lament of Divergences, covers this very topic. Tanisho is a collection of interactions with Shinran Shonin, as they were recalled by a very close follower of his named Yuyenbo. I'd like to share this passage from Tanisho with you, and share some thoughts on this particular section. It begins with a question posed by Yuyenbo to his teacher, Shinran. Although I say the Nembutsu, the feeling of dancing with joy is faint within me, and I have no thought of wanting to go to the Pure Land quickly. How should it be for a person of the Nembutsu? When I asked the master this, he answered, I too have had this question, and the same thought occurs to you, Yuyenbo. When I reflect deeply on it, by the very fact that I do not rejoice at what should fill me with such joy that I dance in the air and dance on the earth, I realize all the more that my birth is completely settled. What suppresses the heart that should rejoice and keeps one from rejoicing is the action of blind passions. Nevertheless, the Buddha, knowing this beforehand, called us foolish beings possessed of blind passions, thus becoming aware that the compassionate vow of other power is indeed for the sake of ourselves, who are such beings. We find it all the more trustworthy. Further, having no thought of wanting to go to the Pure Land quickly, we think forlornly that we may die even when we become slightly ill. This is the act of blind passions. It is hard for us to abandon this old home of pain, where we have been transmigrating for innumerable kalpas down to the present, and we feel no longing for the Pure Land of peace, where we have yet to be born. Truly, how powerful our blind passions are. But though we feel reluctant to part from this world, at the moment our karmic bonds to this Saha world run out, and helplessly we die, We shall go to that land. Amida pities especially the person who has no thought of wanting to go to the Pure Land quickly. Reflecting on this, we feel the great vow of great compassion to be all the more trustworthy and realize that our birth is settled. If we had the feeling of dancing with joy and wishing to go to the Pure Land quickly, we might wonder if we weren't free of our blind passions. Thus were his words. Namandab, namandab, namandab. The question that prompts this discussion really contains two statements of confession made by Yuyenbo. The first confession is that although I say the Nembutsu, the feeling of dancing with joy is faint with me. And the second divulgence is, I have no thought of wanting to go to the Pure Land quickly. These admissions are followed by Yuyenbo's question, how should it be for a person of the Nembutsu? The question Yuyenbo is really asking is more like, what's wrong with me? Or, am I doing something wrong or incorrectly? Or am I misunderstanding the teachings? Perhaps Yuyenbo is even doubting what he should know of Amida Buddha, of Shinjin, or of the Pure Land. In a way, he's asking, why don't I feel joy every time I say Namo Amida Butsu? And should I want to die soon so I can go to the Pure Land? Those are good questions. And each can be interpreted, can be an interpretation of the words, how should it be for a person of the Nembutsu? Maybe you've wondered similar things in the past, and perhaps you wonder such things now. I know I certainly have experienced such doubts and questions. But what I find even more interesting than being able to relate to Yuyenbo's confessions and the question is the response that Shinran provides. Shinran doesn't admonish or discourage Yuyenbo. He instead tells his follower, in what I assume is a pastoral tone, that I too have had this question, and then says it's remarkable that the same thought occurs to you, Yuyenbo. How comforting it must be to find out that a teacher of Shinran's stature experienced moments of doubt and uncertainty himself. Yuyenbo expresses his desire to continue his life as a human being. A life he knows, but a life filled with delusions and suffering, rather than move on to the life of a truly awakened being, a life unknown to him, but a life in the Pure Land of bliss. Entering our second year of pandemic, we are not all that dissimilar to Yuyenbo. We cling to our lives of material desires and personal comforts that people of Shinran's time couldn't possibly even imagine. And we fear the physical suffering and loss of lives brought about by COVID. In his response to Yuyenbo, Shinran assures him, and also assures us, that he is not the only one with such doubts, and affirms that the compassionate vow of other power is indeed for the sake of each of us. Shinran confirms that the Pure Land path is right for himself, is right for Yuyenbo, and is right for each of us. In the second part of Section 9 to Tanisho, Shinran continues to explain to Yuyenbo, and of course to us as well, that craving for and attachment to the illusion of permanence is the root of our problems. We all find it hard to abandon this old home of pain and cling to the Saha world, even with our dying breath. In other words, this may be a crappy, pain-filled world, but it's our crappy, pain-filled world. Yet immeasurable wisdom and compassion takes pity in our human condition, especially the person who has no thought of wanting to go to the Pure Land quickly, and makes it all the more certain that our birth there is truly settled. Suffering is not only our suffering, it's a suffering that all experience. Fear and doubt are not only our fear and doubt, they're the fear and doubt that all experience. The power of immeasurable wisdom and compassion overcomes all of our insecurities, attachments, delusions, fears, and doubts to assure us that our birth in the Pure Land of Peace is settled, even if we aren't in a rush to get there. We really are living in an unprecedented time, one of fear, doubt, suffering, and death. But the truth is, we aren't the first to live in what was thought to be unprecedented times. 900,000 COVID deaths in the US alone is a staggering figure. So is a total of over 5.7 million global COVID deaths. Each death is a statistic, but each death is also a tragedy. That's because each life is fragile. Each life is impermanent. Each life is precious. When faced with such grim circumstances, it's understandable that we aren't continuously leaping with joy. And like Yuienbo, I'm in no hurry to leave this world. Perhaps you aren't either. That doesn't mean joy can't be found in living a life of Nembutsu. It means that we should savor and share the joy when we do encounter it. It means we should treasure this life while we have it, and treasure the lives of all around us. It means we should respond with Namo Amida Butsu each time we encounter wisdom and compassion, which works tirelessly on behalf of all beings. So please join me once again in Gasho. The fragile nature of human existence underlies both the young and the old, and therefore we must, one and all, turn to the teaching of the Buddha and awaken to the ultimate source of life. But so understanding the meaning of death, we shall come to fully appreciate the meaning of this life, which is unrepeatable and thus to be treasured above all else. By virtue of true compassion, let us realize the unexcelled value of our human existence, and let us live with the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu, in our hearts. Namandab, 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 Namandab.